Hello, I'm Fujita. I specialize in language acquisition and language teaching. In the first half of today's lecture, I'd like to talk about individual differences in language learning and to give you some tips for learning English. In the second half, I will discuss the concept of world Englishes and English as a lingua franca. Some people succeed in learning a foreign language, but others don't. Some people learn quite quickly, but others take a long time to learn a language. Where do these differences come from? First, let's take a look at age factor. Many people believe the younger, the better in foreign language learning. Is it really true? The research findings say yes and no. As for the mastery of phonological system of pronunciation, researchers almost unanimously agree that the younger, the better. Most older learners inevitably have an accent when they speak the target language. However, what about learning grammar or vocabulary? Let's take a look at the example of learning the past tense. If you teach English to adults, you may simply tell them to put ed at the end of the verb to express an action that happened in the past. Even if you list some examples such as talk, talked, express, expressed, it will take only a few seconds to explain. But if you tell this to a 3-year-old, it doesn't work as smoothly. Children need to learn through experiencing concrete examples one by one and over, instead of studying abstract rules. This shows that adults can learn more efficiently than children. The same thing can be said about vocabulary learning. Grown-ups have much wider knowledge of the world, and it's easier for them to understand abstract concepts. Also, because they have higher cognitive skills, they can use an analogy to connect the relationships among some words, which makes it easier for them to remember these words. Does this mean the older the better against our intuition? Suppose you compare two 20-year-old men. One started to learn English at the age of 3, and the other started at the age of 15, for example. It is most likely that the former will be much better English speaker than the latter. The research findings show that even though grown-ups can learn faster than younger learners because of their cognitive skills, particularly at the initial stage, children learn better in the end. It takes more time for children to learn, but it also means that they spend more time using the language and they are more exposed to the language they are trying to learn. In other words, the duration of the language learning and the amount of exposure play a significant role in learning a foreign language. Now, there are also differences in the learning style of individual learners. Some are visual learners, for example, while others are oral learners. The visual learners feel comfortable when they read textbooks and learn, but oral learners find it easier to remember when they listen to some materials. Actually, at this very moment, some of you are listening to this lecture and concentrating on the sounds. But some of you may be reading and studying the script of this lecture in the magazine. Having such a difference does not mean that one style is better than the other. You need to choose the style you feel most comfortable with. Another difference in cognitive style of learning identifies those who are field independent and those who are field dependent. Field, in this case, refer to context. And this distinction between the two is whether you separate details from the general background or you see things holistically. You can say a field-independent person is more analytical than field-dependent person. I have taught many students in the past, and students who have field-independent were very good at translating each sentence and analyzing the grammatical structures. But when they are asked to summarize the whole text, they had trouble. In contrast, students who are field-dependent were quite skillful at grasping the gist of the reading, but were not so sure about the grammatical details. So if you are a field-independent learner, you might want to tackle grammar workbooks and try intensive reading or dictation when you study English. On the other hand, if you are field-dependent type, you might want to try extensive reading and listening and to go out to talk with as many people as possible in English. In any case, what is important is to find the style of learning that suits you best. Don't worry if your learning style is different from other people's learning style. Just be confident and be yourself. Finally, I'd like to pay attention to the role of English in the globalized world. Since the early 1990s, an Indian sociolinguist named Kachru has been advocating the importance of the varieties of English around the world. He has called these world Englishes. Please note that English is used in the plural here. It indicates that there is more than a single type of English. English language, of course, originated in England and was spoken by the people living there, but gradually its use expanded to the colonies of the British Empire. In many countries, the language developed in its own way, and each variation should be recognized and accepted as it is. When you compare British English and American English, you cannot say which is superior to the other. Kachru classified world Englishes into three categories: inner circle, outer circle, and extended circles. The first category is called inner circle. Countries where so-called native speakers live, such as the UK, US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, are categorized in this group. In the inner circle, English is used as a first language. Former British colonies such as India, South Africa, or Singapore belong to the category called outer circle. These are the countries where English is often used as an official or second language, but people may use a different vernacular or a local language for everyday use. Other countries, including Japan, use a local language for both official and daily use, but for trading and other business purposes, English is used as a foreign language. And these countries belong to the extended circle category. Some statistics show that about 2.1 billion people speak English around the world. The number of people who speak English as a first language is 330 million, which accounts for about 16% of all English speakers. the number of people who speak English as a second language is about 520 million, which is about 25%. And the rest, almost 60% of all the English speakers belong to the extended circle. What does this mean? It means that when a Japanese business person uses English for business purposes, they are more likely to use it with people from extended circle or the outer circle than the people from the inner circle. In fact, many Japanese companies set up factories in Southeast Asian countries, but most of the communication is done in English rather than the local language there. Thus, it is a common understanding that English no longer belongs to the inner circle country per se. English today is considered to be a common language or the lingua franca of the world. So we can say it belongs to everybody, which includes you and me. When we study English, our models will always be that of inner circle. But we do not need to equate that with our achievement goal, which means that it is a good idea to study hard and improve your English as much as you can, but you don't have to be a native speaker to use English. As long as you can communicate with people around the world, you don't have to be ashamed of your own English, nor should you look down on other people's English. In the previous lecture, I said fluency is more important than accuracy in the communicative language teaching of the 21st century. With this in mind, why don't we enjoy communicating with each other so that people all over the world can coexist hand in hand?